It seems we are, once again, back in a familiar, uncomfortable place. On September 18, 2025, President Trump, while speaking aboard the technological marvel that is Air Force One, decided to revisit one of his greatest hits. He suggested that the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, should perhaps take a long, hard look at revoking the broadcast licenses of television networks. And why? Because according to him, their coverage was a staggering 97% negative. It's a statistic that feels less like a data point and more like a number pulled directly from the same place he gets his policy ideas. The president argued that networks providing him with wholly bad publicity shouldn't be allowed to operate, which is a truly fascinating interpretation of the First Amendment. This is not some new, avant-garde threat. It's a rerun of a show we've seen before. Back in August 2025, Trump had already taken to his favorite social media platform, Truth Social, to declare that networks like ABC and NBC should lose their licenses. The recent comments simply cranked up the volume on an already loud and troubling theme. The president, in his classic style, deferred the actual dirty work to FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, whom he praised as a great patriot. This effectively paints Carr not as an independent regulator, but as an extension of the president's will, tasked with punishing his media adversaries. It's a move that blurs the lines between governance and personal grievance, which is always a comforting sign in a stable democracy. The implication here is crystal clear. If you are a news organization and you cover the president in a way he finds unflattering, your very right to exist could be called into question. This isn't just a critique of the media's tone. It is a fundamental challenge to the media's role as a watchdog. The idea that a broadcast license, a permit to operate on public airwaves, is contingent on providing positive press for the person in power is profoundly disturbing. It transforms journalism from a public service into a public relations exercise for the government, where the price of admission is a glowing review. This sets a dangerous precedent for how the executive branch views the free press. Let's be very clear about how this is supposed to work. The FCC is an independent agency for a reason. Its mandate is to regulate interstate and international communications, not to police the content of news reports for political bias. The president suggesting that the FCC should act as his personal media enforcer is like a restaurant customer suggesting the health inspector should shut down a competitor because their soup is better. It completely misunderstands or perhaps willfully ignores the entire purpose of the institution. This latest salvo from the president isn't just an angry tweet. It's a direct and public pressure campaign aimed squarely at the foundations of a free press. So what prompted this latest presidential outburst? The immediate catalyst appears to be the saga surrounding late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. The entire controversy ignited following Kimmel's monologue on September 15, 2025. During the show, he commented on the tragic fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kimmel suggested that some of the president's supporters were attempting to distance themselves from the shooter, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. The remarks were pointed, they were political, and they almost immediately landed Jimmy Kimmel Live in the crosshairs of a coordinated campaign. This was the spark that would soon engulf a major network in a political firestorm. The backlash was swift and severe. Just 2 days after the monologue aired, on September 17th, ABC announced it was suspending Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. This was not a decision made in a vacuum. It came after immense pressure, which included a direct and public threat from the chairman of the FCC himself. This move sent a shockwave through the industry. A major television network had effectively benched one of its most prominent stars in response to political blowback. It was a stark demonstration of how quickly a media entity might fold when confronted with the combined wrath of political figures and their supporters, raising serious questions about editorial independence. This incident wasn't an isolated event, but part of a troubling pattern. Earlier in 2025, CBS had already canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, after Colbert had been critical of the network's settlement of a lawsuit filed by Trump. Following that cancellation, the president had even posted a warning that Kimmel would be next. So when ABC suspended Kimmel, Trump celebrated on Truth Social, congratulating the network for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. The message was unmistakable. Critics will be silenced, one by one. This creates an environment where hosts and producers must constantly look over their shoulders, wondering if a joke or a segment will be the one that gets their show pulled from the air. The suspension of a popular late-night show over a political monologue is a deeply concerning development. Late-night comedy has long served as a forum for political satire and criticism, a place where jesters can speak truth to power. When a network caves to pressure and removes a show for fulfilling that very function, it signals a retreat from confrontational comedy and, by extension, from confrontational journalism. It tells every other host, producer, and writer in the business that there is a line, and that line is drawn by the powerful people you are supposed to be holding to account. The result is a media landscape that is less brave, less challenging, and ultimately, less free. The pressure on ABC didn't just come from online outrage, it came directly from the top of the nation's broadcast regulator. Before ABC suspended Kimmel, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr went on a conservative podcast and issued a thinly veiled threat. He warned that we can do this the easy way or the hard way, implying that if ABC did not take action against Kimmel's show, the FCC would. This is an extraordinary statement for the head of an independent agency to make. It is the regulatory equivalent of a mob shakedown using the power of the federal government to intimidate a private company into silencing a critic of the administration. It's a stunning departure from regulatory norms. Carr's warning was not an empty threat. His words carried immense weight, particularly with the local affiliate stations that are essential to a network's reach. Following Carr's comments, Nexstar Media Group, one of the largest owners of local TV stations in the country, announced it would no longer carry Jimmy Kimmel Live on its 32 ABC-affiliated stations. This was a massive blow to the show's distribution and put immense financial and logistical pressure on ABC. Faced with a major affiliate group revolt, spurred on by the FCC chairman, ABC's decision to suspend the program became almost a foregone conclusion. The hard way was clearly demonstrated. However, not everyone at the FCC was on board with this strong-arm tactic. Democratic Commissioner Ana Gomez quickly and publicly pushed back against her own chairman. She stated unequivocally that the FCC does not have the authority, the ability, or the constitutional right to revoke a broadcast license based on the content of a show. Gomez emphasized that Carr's pressure campaign had no legal basis whatsoever, and was a dangerous overreach of his position. Her dissent highlighted the deep political divisions within the agency, and underscored the unprecedented nature of the chairman's actions, framing it not as regulation, but as raw political intimidation. The entire episode exposes a fundamental misunderstanding or deliberate misrepresentation of how TV licensing actually works. The FCC does not license national networks like ABC, CBS, or NBC. Instead, it grants licenses to the thousands of individual local broadcast stations across the country, the very stations that Nexstar owns. While the FCC chairman cannot unilaterally pull a license, his public threats can spook those local license holders into compliance. By threatening their business, he can effectively force a network's hand. It's a clever, if deeply cynical way to exert control without having the direct legal authority to do so. The response from the media industry to this pressure has been, to put it mildly, disheartening. Several major corporations have shown a concerning willingness to accommodate the administration's demands. ABC News previously settled a lawsuit with Trump for a reported $15 million. CBS canceled Stephen Colbert's show following legal entanglements with the president. Even social media giant Meta reportedly dropped its fact-checking program after facing threats from Trump. And in a particularly jarring move, the Washington Post's owner, Jeff Bezos, reportedly killed an editorial endorsement of Kamala Harris, and instead donated to Trump's inauguration. This pattern suggests that for some media giants, the path of least resistance involves appeasement. The broader implications of these actions have not gone unnoticed. Critics, First Amendment advocates, and prominent Democrats have sounded the alarm. Former President Barack Obama weighed in on X, calling the administration's threats precisely the kind of government coercion that the First Amendment was designed to prevent. He and many others see this not as a simple political squabble, but as a foundational threat to free speech and a free press. When the government can successfully pressure companies into silencing dissenting voices, the core principle of a media that can hold power accountable begins to crumble, which is, of course, the entire point. Analysts have drawn disturbing parallels between these tactics and the methods used by authoritarian leaders in other countries to control the press. In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban has systematically dismantled independent media, using state influence and friendly oligarchs to take over news outlets. Similar strategies of applying political and financial pressure to control media narratives have been seen in Serbia, Russia, and India. These comparisons are not made lightly. They highlight a shared playbook for weakening democratic institutions, where the first step is often to discredit, intimidate, and ultimately silence any source of independent information or criticism. This brings us to the ultimate terrifying question. Can a president in a democracy actually silence their media critics? The Constitution says no. The law says no. But reality is proving to be far more complicated. While a president cannot legally order a network off the air for negative coverage, they can create a climate of fear and intimidation. They can use the levers of government like the FCC to pressure broadcasters. They can encourage corporate allies to punish dissent. The result is a chilling effect, where self-censorship becomes a survival strategy. And in the end, a press that is afraid to speak is not a free press at all.